Okay, everybody, we're back here, and now we are going to finish off the discussion of the Delhi Sultanate. Let's go. Okay, so after the Mamluk dynasty that went again from 1206 to 1290, they are going to be succeeded by the Khaljis dynasty, which was really just a couple of people. You can see it's relatively short. They were Turkic, and they basically took over by killing the last Mamluk emperor. Jalal-ud-Din Firuz Khalji is the one that actually assassinates the emperor and is able, the sultan, and take control. And yeah, there you go. And we've got a new dynasty. It's very short-lived. Kind of their big thing. They do two things. One, they're going to drive the empire south. I'll show you a couple maps of that later. And they have to deal with the Mongols, which they do a pretty good job. The Mongols were never really able to penetrate. Well, that first for a few waves of Mongols, really not able to penetrate in. They'll come back, the descendants of them, the Mughals, will come back in and cause some problems later, but at least that initial wave they're able to prevent. Very big on the army, keeping everything going with the army, but very oppressive, very brutal to pretty much everybody. Nobody really liked the Khaljis, and they're overthrown by a military coup just 30 years later. The leader of that military coup, Ghiyath al-Din Tughlaq, was the one that was able to establish the next dynasty of the Delhi Sultanate, that being the Tughlaq dynasty, which lasted pretty long, from 1320 to 1413. Tughlaq himself, a picture depicting him on the left, won't last very long because he's assassinated by who? By his son, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, on the right, who will probably be their most successful emperor or sultan. He will expand the empire to its greatest height. So it is during the Tughlaq dynasty that it reaches larger than it had ever reached before. But in doing that, so they're conquering a lot of people, so they have a lot of revolts to deal with. They also, near the end of the dynasty, have to deal with the emergence of the Vijayanagara Empire, which I'll be talking about in a separate video. They're going to break away in the south. Still brutally oppressive to Hindus. That's just not going to stop. And on the side, the Tughlaqs, and I'll show you some pictures later, very big on architectural patronage. That's going to be really, really important to them. But alas, they will fall as well. But as you can see here, the growth. So there's the Mamluks, then you have the Khaljis, and then, of course, look at how much land they're able to dominate under the Tughlaqs. So undoubtedly the largest it would ever get. The Tughlaqs will fall for a variety of reasons, but the biggest one is that they just get wrecked by Timur. I'll talk about Timur later. I've talked about him in other videos because he messed up other people too, caused problems to the Mamluks. He's going to problems to everybody, but he will set up a pretty interesting empire himself. Again, he gets his own video. But yeah, in 1398, they sack and destroy Delhi. There's chaos after that. In the next 15 years, basically, it's just trying to reestablish control, more and more revolts, until finally the Tughlaqs are overthrown by the Sayyid dynasty, which would go from 1414 to 1451. That was led by Khizr Khan. And basically, they're all about trade and trying to reestablish trade. Other than that, we don't have a lot of records of them. We know that they lost land like after Timur, and they tried to get that land back, and we know that it failed. We do know Shia Islam shows up at this time, which will cause some divisions because it was mostly Sunni prior to that. And that's something that we're going to talk about in the future. But other than that, you know, that's all I got for them. As you can see, there definitely a lot less land than prior. And then finally, we have the Lodi dynasty. This were a different ethnic group here. These are Pashtun people from the Pashtun tribe, which are Afghans. And the main guy that starts it is Bahlul Khan. And he comes in and he's actually able to regain some land. But again, going after the Hindus. Lots of destruction of Hindu temples. He is going to build a new center of power at Agra, which I will talk about later, because that'll actually play more prominently in the next, in the Mughals as opposed to here. Unfortunately, under the last emperor, in the early 1500s, they just get torn apart. They can't agree on anything. They start fighting, and that really weakens them to the point where the Mughals under Babur the Tiger, who we'll talk about him later, are able to come in and conquer it, and that will be the end of the Delhi Sultanate. Last about 300 years, not too bad, but alas, that would be it. And so that was the last dynasty. You can see ends in 1526. So really, not too much left compared to its height. The big thing here is the economics of this area. Under the Delhi Sultanate, they are the center of the Afro-Eurasian trade. We'll talk about Vijayanagara. I'll talk about some groups in Ceylon or Sri Lanka. So southern India will have some empires too, but India is just really crucial. We also know that it was a very cosmopolitan empire. So many different people of lots of different nationalities would travel and trade and actually live here. We know that it was so big that by 1500, their economy was worth about an estimated $60.5 billion, which made it one of the wealthiest areas in the entire world. They're also going to bring a lot of technology in, particularly things like spinning wheels for making thread. India is the #1 producer of cotton in the world, so that's going to help them out. As well as other things besides spinning wheels and textiles. For textiles, they'll bring in like gears and pulleys and water wheels, a lot of influx of that Islamic technology, which of course we've talked about in some separate videos. Lots of agricultural goods, spices, fruits, rice. We have diamonds and gems. I mean, they really are the center. I mean, really, really the center of this trade. And I'm going to get into that a lot deeper in some videos that I'm going to be doing on the Silk Road. So don't worry about now. I'm just kind of giving you an introduction here. We do have some cultural changes that also occur. Sharia law is used. So before this area, you had, pretty much dominant by Hindus, and now we have this influx of the Muslims that come in. So Sharia law is very, very important. You do see a mix of Hindu, Islamic, and Turkic peoples here, which results in very interesting architectural, music, and literature type things. A new language basically begins, Hindu Urdu, which is still prominent today, and very big on education, which again, the theme of the Islamic empires, which we've discussed in other videos, to the point where you actually had scholars would come from all over the world to the universities in the Delhi Sultanate to study, to spread knowledge. So it's pretty impressive when it's all said and done. The architecture, I think, is really, really interesting here. This is the Qutab Minar and the Alai Darwaza. So on the left here, so this is kind of a traditional Hindu temple here, but then we're going to add in the minaret. But the way that the minaret is shaped, again, very Indian Hindu. Same thing in this temple. We see the classic arches that you'd often see in Islam, but these domes are actually a little bit, and the decorations on the outside of them are very much Hindu. And then another great example of that is the Jama Masjid Mosque, which is one of the more impressive ones in all of India. You see their minarets, you see the scalloping right here, very important. But when you get on the inside, you see more aspects of Hindu stuff as well. And so this was a really successful empire, lasted for a long time, had a lot of influence, and but just like so many others, conquered in the end. All right, guys, hopefully you enjoyed that one, and I will see you soon.